Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Conversation. I'm David Shuster. Has America reached a tipping point, a point of no return because of the deep partisanship in the United States? Well, there's an interesting new perspective on this based on a new fiction thriller book that is out. It is from David Fisher. He's an author who has had more than 24 books on the New York Times bestseller list. Most of them have been nonfiction. He has ghostwritten or co-authored books with Donald Trump and Tommy Lasorda and William Shatner, to name just a few. But his latest is called The Executive Order. Again, a fiction thriller. David, first of all, before I get into the book, what prompted you to want to write a fiction book after all these, nonfiction things that you've written through the years?
Well, actually, I've done some fiction before. In fact, purely coincidentally, I'm sitting in a beach house right now that was paid for by the movie made from my first novel, which they're showing this week on TCM. So, and then I've done another novel of mine based on a true story. They announced last week that Benedict Cumberbatch is going to star in the movie version.
Well, my apologies then, and not being totally up to date on your career. But you're prominently known, at least lately, for having ghostwritten a book with Donald Trump. How much of that experience of working with Donald Trump and the deep partisanship in the United States prompted you to write The Executive Order? And give us a little bit of a summary about the book.
Well, actually what happened is a publisher came to me a couple of years ago and asked me to write a sequel to the 1935 bestseller, It Can't Happen Here. And the truth is, I believe at least, this country's in trouble. And whether you lean to the right or lean to the left, whatever we're doing is not working. And we need to find a way of getting along and finding that middle ground. And the concept of the book is what can happen if we don't. And many years ago, I had a conversation with Alan Dershowitz, and Alan Dershowitz told me that the biggest danger facing this country today is that the President of the United States has been given more than 700 special powers by Congress. And the only one that was ever repealed was the right to put Japanese citizens in internment camps. Other than that, they're all on the books. And under the right circumstances, the president can use these to take control of the country. And that's what this book is about.
And in the circumstances of your book, it features an Ian Reitman. He's an independent senator who pledges to heal the partisan divide in the United States. He's an independent senator. There's a series of terrorist attacks, and he starts issuing executive orders that chip away at our constitutional freedoms. And then there is this journalist named Rolling Stone, and I presume that's a play on Rolling Stones, who discovers this. And tell us, I mean, what is it about each character that you're drawing upon?
One of the things that I love about novels is they bring you into worlds that you've never been in. And a close friend of mine has spent his life in a wheelchair. And so Raleigh Stone, the Rolling Stone, is a wounded warrior who is in a wheelchair. He was a special operator turned digital journalist. His wheelchair, which he refers to as Mighty Chair, isn't just an ordinary chair, it's sort of a tricked out chair, but everything that chair does, you could do today. And the truth is, it literally takes you on a ride. And this has all the thrills and cliffhangers that we would expect from an action adventure book with a political background. It's a warning, but it's entertainment.
Was it cathartic to you to write this, given how you see our political divide and the dangers that are out there?
Well, I've done books with people on both sides of the political spectrum. Beyond Trump, I did a book with Glenn Beck, and it was, how can we get along? If we don't get along, it was a nonfiction book about the same subject. I did Ann Romney's book about learning to live with cerebral palsy. And on the other hand, I did a book with a guy named Robert Wexler, who was a congressman from Florida, and at that time, the most liberal member of Congress. And it's about how Congress works, or in fact, doesn't work. So I've done the whole political spectrum. and I love politics, and I understand the hypocrisy of it, and I try to use that as satire. There's a lot of humor in the book. There's hopefully some poignancy. Hopefully there's a lot that you can't put it down. You got to lay on the beach and continue reading. But what I like is that it takes you into the world of the disabled in a way I believe no book has done before, and it makes our character an action adventure hero.
Well, one of the things about the book that I so appreciate is, I mean, there's a lot of different theories as to how we've gotten here. And one of the theories that I've long espoused because of my experience in broadcast and cable news is that the broadcast media is part of the problem, because we will put on, at least in the mainstream media, you'll put on the flamethrowers, the bomb throwers, the people who are in the middle ground, the people who want to negotiate and making incremental changes or reach out across the aisle. That doesn't make for great television. What makes for great television are the bombastic, crazy people. And when people are given an incentive that, well, if you get on cable television and broadcast news more often, you'll be able to raise more money for your political race. There's a perverse incentive for people to be extreme. How much of that resonates with you?
Well, I believe that we still haven't figured the internet into the political process yet. And I think we are adapting the structure that already exists to the internet instead of using the internet for what it is. And what the internet has done is enabled us to form into tribes, into niches. And so politicians can appeal to a niche now, which they never had to before. They had to appeal to a much wider spectrum of people. Now you can go after your people, and the internet allows you to do it.
Is there something still glamorous in your estimation about journalism? And I may be answering the question myself here, because clearly you take a figure in your book, as you mentioned, in a wheelchair, but you glamorize him and his sort of determination to serve the greater good. Is that still possible in journalism, at least across the mainstream?
Well, as someone who was trained in journalism, I hope so. One of the things that we need to figure out how to do is separate truth and not truth. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that on our computers, on the television, it looks the same and it sounds the same. And so you can, there no longer is that need in journalism to necessarily to fact check over and over and over. And so we're in this world where truth and untruth have the same weight. And the dangers of that, as we write about in the book, are incredible. Incredible. You can say anything you want and you can justify it, and there are people who will believe you. I mean, we're still talking about. Trust
is a big theme in your book, not only for the main character and who he can trust to try to tell these truths, but also how the audience can trust information. Are there lessons from the book or things that, in terms of how we all decide what to trust and what to believe, that come through in the book that you think are good examples for real society today?
Boy, that's the question, isn't it? And what happens is we each have, what the internet allows us to do is reinforce what we already believe. And that's a very dangerous thing. By watching only Fox or only CNN and MSNBC, you are constantly getting reinforced what you already believe. And you nod your head and say, I'm right, and I knew I was right, and they're wrong. And the whole concept of the book, Executive Order, is what happens what's the extension of that, the far extension of that? What's the danger of it? Where do we go? And the scary part is no matter how much our rights become taken away from us, there are people who are going to support that. There are people who are going to nod their head and say, yeah, that works because that guy is not getting whatever he needs.
And that speaks right to Donald Trump. In your estimation, is Donald Trump aware, do you think, of the damage and the dangerous course that largely he's put us on, or does he just see this as, well, it's just sort of his own sort of game and people will get over it?
Donald Trump is the most fascinating combination of narcissism and insecurity I have ever met. It is mind-boggling in person to spend time with him for exactly that reason. And so whatever feeds the ego is what he accepts. And we've seen the result. And you can either say, I like it or I don't like it. But I mean, that's up to each of us individually. But I think it's dangerous, and I think it's not based. When I always read that Donald Trump has strategy, I always laugh. His strategy is whatever he is thinking at that moment.
David Fisher is an author. His latest book is the fiction thriller, The Executive Order. It's something of a cautionary tale for all of us. And David, so good of you to join us on the conversation. Thanks for doing this, and good luck to you.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.